Just quickly give you an overview of the scheduled meetups by the end of the year. And on 10th of November, we do have David O'Brien that is going to present and talk about the startup infrastructure. So you will have an opportunity to hear about the startup that he has created and all the challenges that he had in a week. As well, we do have Laura Graham. She's a Power Platform MVP, and we have this meetup scheduled for 17th of November. 19th of November, we do have serverless event. So everything you want to hear about the serverless. 24th of November, we do have Sarah from Scotland. We did have her speaking to our meetup already, like a couple of years ago. She came to visit us here in London, and the topic is going to be the hybrid cloud management. So going to touch base with Azure Stack, Azure Arc, and all other services which incorporates together the hybrid cloud management. 1st of November, we have Manuel Pace, and he's going to take about the Kubernetes Foundation, which is going to be an interesting topic. And so far, the last meetup is scheduled for 8th of December, which we are going to have Matteo, and we are going to hear everything about the DevSecOps. So the next couple of months is going to be pretty busy. I hope to see you guys enjoying all the meetups and all the speakers that we have arranged. I just want to remind you that if you enjoy the speakers, you can support a little bit of the speakers by buying them a coffee. It's not a mandatory, just if you like or if you wish only. So no pressure here. And today I want to introduce Sam, and Sam is going to talk about the cloud adoption and well-architected framework. And Sam, thank you very much for being here with us today, and very looking forward to hear all the presentation that you have prepared to us and share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Thank you for having me, guys. So just a brief intro. My name is Sam Khanjar. I'm a cloud solution architect working for Microsoft as part of the OCP team, which is one commercial partner. We work with partners, and one of the initiatives that we have this year is to educate our partners and customers around cloud adoption and well-architected frameworks. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to scratch the surface. So this is by no means a definitive guide. I'll give you lots of resources as we go through, but there is a lot more to it. So, and I'll talk to it, and I'll talk you through it, and I'll show you some of the links, and I'll give you some resources that you can go and read if you're interested to learn more about it. So, let's kick this off. There's a long agenda, so give me a second. Let me just see. Right. So, as I said, we've got two frameworks that we're going to be talking about today. The first one is the Cloud Adoption Framework and the Well-Architected Framework. Both of them, they tie in together. So, and there is a piece that sits in between, which I will touch on later on. And I think it's a new initiative that we released earlier in the year during COVID, because we have seen a lot of adoption and accelerated migrations to the cloud. And this is something that we have, we helped our customers to make sure that when they land into Azure, they have all the foundations and the capabilities that they need. So the first thing is, so why is cloud adoption important? So it's the key point here is the digital transformation, is the evolution of the business. Digital transformation embraces the necessity to change. What kind of change are we talking about here? We're looking at optimization, identifying and implementing efficiencies. There is no magic efficiency switch to flip in this case. It's about a process of change, changing the foundation of how your business works. Mainly, of you already know that if they don't digitally transform and evolve, their businesses won't survive. And this is what we've seen with customers. They come to us as like, okay, how can I survive in this pandemic, for example? We've seen a lot of take on, for example, the like Teams and working from home. And that has put a lot of pressure on businesses to scale up, to improve their infrastructure, to make sure that people can do their jobs and be more productive. And now they are committed to make this transformation happen. But companies need guidance during this challenging process, technical guidance that's tailored to their industry and considers their business requirements and objectives. So change is necessary in today's competitive business climate. So how do you implement change to your business to be more efficient? Change is hard because it affects people, not just processes. And this is something that we know for a fact. The decision is to commit to change is only the first step. Whether evolving to meet increased market demand or face tough foreign competition, change is inevitable. Many business leaders already realize that change is much more than just swapping out technologies. It's an incremental process evolving in how you're doing business that affects culture company-wide and all your employees. And it starts with you, the business leader. You know that the journey to the cloud is hard but necessary to continue to grow in an evolving market. And one thing that I want to mention here, the cloud, it's not the end state. It's not the goal. It's a tool that will help you to grow. So this is what a lot of business, we're trying to talk to our businesses and say, right, guys, you can use the cloud as you see fit, but it's what's your ambition, what's your strategy. That's how how you can actually start looking at the cloud as a whole, as a tool, and use it for the best when it comes to functionality. So we'll go into this as well. So modernization, drive measurable growth for your business. Now, with the buy-in from your leadership team, you can lead the way to change and modernization. You might be thinking, what's in it for me, for my business, and what's the bottom line here? There are lots of growth benefit that come with change, and they are measurable. You might be considering a hybrid cloud solution for your growing business. Modernize some of your on-prem apps and move other apps to the cloud. Moving to hybrid cloud solution will save you on-premise hardware costs. Leadership can allocate less fund to pay for reduced staffing at her or on-premise data centers. You grow more. Sorry. So basically, you grow more online with B2C sales, tapping into more computing resources to handle sudden peaks in demand. So it's an evolution and carefully planned business-wide change, moving to the cloud. And this is a very important point here that we need to say, we need to point out is when you migrate your first app, and when you look at migration for your application, either to, for example, at the moment, which we see is a very hot topic, it's the Windows 2008 end of support and the SQL 2008. People, a lot of customers and businesses, they move their infrastructure as is, lift and shift into the cloud to make sure that they can continue getting the support from Microsoft and getting all the patches and security updates. But that's a strategy. You need to put a strategy in place before you start thinking about how the cloud could benefit you in the long run. And this is what we're going to come into as well. So one of our customers Dentsu was guided with Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure, building a modern, scalable, secure, and compliant PaaS solution, ensuring the company healthy, growing towards more competitive future. So Dentsu is driving media and digital brand messaging for companies pursuing an aggressive global M&A strategy. Their footprint is quickly growing. And that's a big thing for them because they wanted to have a scalable solution. But their on-premise data centers were running out of storage with expensive infrastructure unable to update and scale. So they needed more compute to support their globally distributed teams and to manage their growing app platform. A Microsoft Enterprise customer, Dentsu moved into a primary cloud platform on Azure using IaaS and PaaS, and using the Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure migration methodology and best practices to empower everyone in the business with self-service access to the cloud resources. So it's an automated self-service portal where anyone can request a cloud landing zone, get an approval, and automatically have a new environment provision and ready to use in Azure. So Cloud Adoption Framework accelerated the benefit of Azure for Dentsu with automation, cost saving, automated provisioning, and scaling to support teams in new markets. The ability to scale at a speed and mass, assure compliance, and provide full billing transparency for customers. And Azure did enable Dentsu to remain competitive in the market, to continue their innovation journey with automation and Azure AI. That's another customer of ours. So Belmont Green used the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure to design and deploy a future-ready, scalable specialist mortgage platform, establishing the company as specialist mortgage market leader. So Belmont Green offers complex residential and buy-to-let mortgages and serves customers that have traditionally been underserved by mainstream UK mortgage market. Its initiative, specialist mortgage products, offer specialist mortgage without unnecessary risk. But the traditional broker borrowed lender mortgage process is very fragmented, slow, and not transparent. So the company quickly found its automated broker and risk assessment portal, combined with the human underwriters, could not scale as required and lacked a robust regulatory and security posture. So the UK financial service companies must prove they possess required IT controls. Belmont Green recognized it could establish and maintain them more easily in Azure than on-premise or private cloud environment. Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure guided the company in creating and executing the right technology, business, governance, control strategies for its own cloud journey. And also with Microsoft partner, so Belmont Green, they work with Microsoft partner. So they work with New Signature, use the Cloud Adoption Framework, best practices, documentation and tools to execute a 3-month setup phase. After strategy and adoption phases, they provisioned Azure Cloud landing zones, build governance models, security controls, and specialized operating models. Now, with robust authentication, security, performance, Belmont Green switched on the new services and features very quickly. Their first production workload and data analytical platform within 6 weeks of setup, basically. So it is very agile and it's very quick, especially if you use things like DevOps and to scale, to build, and to to be able to provision your services. So the next thing is I'll go into the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. I will call it CAF, and we'll go on we'll touch on an overview of all the pillars and how you can start using that framework. So the key point is change is more than adopting technology. It's it's adapting how you do business. So CAF the CAF framework for Azure means changing how you do business. not just swapping out technology, but changing your enterprise, the culture behind it, and you too, basically. So you have to change your mindset and your attitude towards technology. We share the best practices from our employees, partners, and customers who have already undertaken the cloud journey. And the cloud adoption framework brings together people, processes, and technology, a strategy that's aligned to your business goals and quickly, efficiently, with actionable guidance. It provides guidance for your organization, agile business transformation, which leads to people through change, which is very difficult in a sense. It's not just the technology that changes, it's your people and processes too. And we can help you to guide you through this. So we're talking about an iterative process that supports your business needs. We can help you on your cloud adoption journey. We put the experience of employees, partners, and customers to work for you. We work together with you to build your plan for the cloud adoption. It starts with your vision. So you have to crystallize your vision for the cloud adoption by working across functionally with your finance, market, sales, and HR departments, and work to gain consensus on clear motivation. So why are you adopting the cloud? It has to be a clearer strategy. You have to define the business outcome. What results do you expect to see from adopting the cloud? And the most important is the business justification. So how will the business measure success? So we will work with you, and your partners will work with you to build an actionable cloud adoption plan with strategic and tactical input, such as defining your workloads, assets, aligning your organization, and readying necessary skills. So we don't only look at your technology stack, we look at your people as well to make sure they've got the right skills to take on the challenges that comes ahead, which is basically operating that cloud model, which this is something we're going to talk about in a second as well. So we recommend iterative planning to drive your cloud adoption effort, enabling your technical teams to move incrementally in phases towards cloud adoption. So these are the main pillars for the phases. We call them the modular phases of adoption. As your organization start evolving, the cloud adoption framework adapts to your business needs. So each of the modules in the diagram is an iterative phase that advances your business through the complete life cycle of cloud adoption. Customers can choose the phase best suited to their degree of cloud adoption maturity. The cloud adoption framework offers a guidance methodology to cloud adoption with a specific approach to overcoming common blockers to cloud adoption in each module, such as define strategy, plan, etc. So the cloud adoption framework offers the enterprise a modular framework of how to incrementally onboard to the cloud. And CAF can shift how companies obtain and make use of and lock down their technology resources. And it's as we said earlier, it's a modular framework. So flips the module of how enterprise operate. So for example, transitions organizations to need-based consumption of technology resources, change from CapEx to OpEx. Cloud model assumes security governance, cost optimization, hybrid cloud by default. Develop a future-ready workforce, developing and deploying cloud skills, readiness, organization-wide, basically. So that's what it does for you. And as organization progress through the cloud framework, the main goals of each methodology is to define strategy and plan. You have to have that in place before you can move on, and that's our focus. So we talked about motivation. So what could be the motivation scenarios? There are many, and we will touch on a couple of them in here. So there is no single typical cloud adoption motivation in cloud adoption. Typically, there are more than one. Cloud adoption is an iterative process. There can be many motivations for why your organization is planning digital transformation. So it's very important to engage across functional business groups across the enterprise to explore cloud adoption motivations. So go through, like, for example, data center exits, mergers, acquisition, reduction in capital expenses, end of support, as we talked about, for technology things like Windows 2008 R2 or Windows 2000 or SQL 2008 R2. Or basically things like like cost saving is very important, and we've seen a lot of customers, especially during this difficult period, they've tried to cut costs, and the way they're looking at this is to accelerate their migrations into the cloud, to be able to scale down, to be able to release the data centers, to be able to scale up as well, to be able to reach more customers, and that has helped a lot during this thing. So we talk about, for example, migrating existing workloads. So here are it's an iterative process that enable the customer journey of accelerate migration. And this has been used thoroughly during the last 6 months with lots of customers. So first, what we do is align stakeholders. We gain agreement on migration motivations. We capture the desire for business outcomes and measure them with metrics. And then we align partner support. So we make sure that the right partner is aligned to you, who understand those phases of CAF and the program itself, and are available to support you during the migration journey. And the third thing is basically is gather data and analyze assets and workloads. So inventory existing system, validate the business case by using data about the current state environment, incremental realization. So perform quantitative analysis of what data and deep qualitative assessment of the highest priority workloads, and then make a business case. So that's how we start putting things together and create the business case for your organization. Evaluate the initial high-level return from the potential cloud migration. Ensure that all the stakeholders are aligned on the data in hand, and the decision made to move forward as a business, not as an individual. And then we start creating the migration plan. So the cloud adoption plan template, deploy basic templates. Workload alignment, define the workload in the backlog. Effort alignment, align assets and workloads in the backlog and clearly defines efforts for prioritized workloads. People and time alignments, establish iteration velocity, people times, and releases for migrated workloads. And step 6, build skills readiness plan. So it's basically, this is a quick evaluation of the required skilling for existing, for people within the team, for staff within the team, to better understand what skill requirements should be addressed. And then we go into step 7, which is basically deploy an aligned landing zone. So choose a landing zone, find the right approach to deploying a landing zone based on your adoption pattern. Then deploy that standardized code based. Expand your landing zone regardless of the starting point. Identify the gaps in the deployed landing zone to add required components for resource organization, security, governance, compliance, and operation. This point, step 7, is very important when it comes to it, because one of the things that I mentioned earlier when I started talking about the CAF is there is a missing piece that ties in CAF and the well-architected. It's called the Enterprise Scale Landing Zone. So Enterprise Scale Landing Zone is an initiative that started by Microsoft. It's a landing zone that we deployed for customers and with partners. It's a proven methodology. We're using DevOps to deploy the landing zone with all the pillars around identity, security, governance, and making sure that you have all the functionality available for you before you even land your first workload. So, and there are multiple types of landing zone that you can utilize, starting from a small landing zone, which is the foundation, and growing into an enterprise scale. And then we go into step 8, which is migrate your first 10 workloads. It's an iterative process, repeated every migration. We assess the workloads, assess each batch of workloads to evaluate cost, architecture, and deployment tooling. Deploy workloads. We replicate functionality in the cloud using IaaS and PaaS, cloud native, or other modernization solutions. We'll release workloads afterwards. We test, optimize, document, and review. Release by hand off or governance, basically. So basically, we release by handing off for governance, management, and security. Which takes me to step 9 and the handoff of production workload to cloud governance. So we outline a process for thinking about the corporate policy and processes, then build a disciplines required to deliver on a governance across your cloud enterprise adoption effort. Initial governance foundation, understand the identity baseline discipline, security baseline discipline, and deployment acceleration discipline required to create governance, minimum viable product, MVP as we call it, to serve as the foundation of all adoption. And the last step, which is step 10, we hand off production workloads to cloud operations, and we establish a management baseline. We define business commitments, expand the management baseline, get specific with the advanced operations. That's another, which is basically, this is build new, sorry, very quickly. Build new products. This is for customers who are building new products on the cloud, using native technologies on the cloud, rather than actually migration. So the strategy here is document the business strategy around, so what are the motivation, strategic align, seek consensus on motivation for the migration effort, understanding and categorizing motivation and common themes from various stakeholders across business and IT. Business outcomes. After motivations are aligned, capture the desired business outcomes using clear metrics to measure overall transformation. And then build a cloud migration business case. We start to develop a migration business case with clear guidance on formulas and tools to help business justification. Step 2, evaluate the business justification. So business justification before evaluating opportunities to innovate in the cloud. Complete a high-level business justification to establish stakeholder alignment for the overall adoption plan. Business value consensus, identify how that innovation can align to and drive business value. And then we go to step 3, which is gather data, analyze assets and workloads by getting having the inventory of existing systems, validate the business case by using data about the current state, incremental rationalization by performing quantitative analysis of that data, and deep qualitative assessment of the highest priority workloads. So you have to set your priorities and what are your business critical workloads and what do you want to start migrating to the cloud. Some businesses, they start with small applications which doesn't impact their businesses, which doesn't impact their production, to use it as a proof of concept. We don't like to use proof of concept in a way, but we use it as like a minimal viable product. And that way they could actually test the functionality, test their trust in the cloud, test their tooling, they test their operations, make sure they can see and get the best out of moving to the cloud, basically, before start using it for a bigger workloads or more critical workloads. So step 4, plan for migration of dependent assets. So CAF has a template. We use it to deploy so we deploy the basic template. We can use that template to start scaling, and you can define the workloads in the backlog, and align assets. Then step 5, align governance and requirements to your adoption plan. That's another important piece. And step 6 is define operational needs and business commitments. So you have to define the business commitments, create the business alignment in cloud management, get specific with advanced operations, go beyond your management baseline and apply design principles and advanced operations. So if advanced operations are required to support your operation needs, evaluating the business commitment to determine operation responsibility for both teams. And this actually ties in with third parties. So you have to speak to third parties, your vendors, your application vendor. You need to understand what their requirements are, because we need them aligned with us as we move the application, your workload into the cloud. We need to understand what they support, what they can't support in terms of the OS, the platform. So if they support IaaS, if they support PaaS, all these things needs to be accounted for, and that needs to be aligned with the vendor. And for step 7, we deploy an aligned landing zone. And this is what we talked about earlier. Landing zone can be in different scales, depending on what you're going to be using the landing zone for. But you can always grow. And the main pillars, as so the main pillar is security, governance, and identity, compliance, and making sure that as you deploy, you can operate. And that's very important, because otherwise your teams won't be able to support the environment. Your vendors will reject your applications and basically say it's not supported. So that's why we need to make sure that you have the right foundation, you've got the right pillars. And our product, our product groups, when we start talking about landing zone, we say, right, just imagine you're trying to land a helicopter in the woods. You won't be able to land it without having a space enough. There is a space which has been designed for landing, and without having a landing zone, it's everything that you put on top. You won't succeed. You will have issues, and as you start growing, and we've seen this with customers, is they start using the clouds as a tool without thinking how they have to build the main pillars around security, around their identity, and protect themselves as well from threats. And that's very important. So it's vital that you think about the long term. It's what you're going to be using it for, and you need to have a business strategy. We always emphasize on that. So that's another scenario, basically how to unblock environment design and configuration. We use, as I said, with the same iterative scenarios and iterative cycles through each to make sure that you have the right plan, the right strategy, and the right landing zone as you start moving your first workloads. You can actually find more about about CAF in our documentation. There is a wealth of information there. I've only taken little bits and pieces. I mean, the cloud adoption framework, when we deliver it to our partners and customers, we actually spend about 3 to 4 days, depending on who we're talking to. If we have architects in the room, then it might actually extend to a week, because we have to go through strategies. We talk about how we can operate, what's your operating model. We talk about your designs, what you've got in place. If you have if you're going to using like a brownfield approach, and making sure, deciding whereabouts you are along the journey in the CAF, in the CAF framework. So that's why it's very important to understand it as you go through the migration or your first application in the cloud, is to understand what you need to have in there before you land your first workload. So we've put together a list of tools, templates, assessments, and stuff like that that you can actually use and utilize firsthand. And this will help you as a business, as an IT department, to assess your readiness for the cloud, to assess how ready your people, your processes, and ask you a list of questions. So these are the things that you could actually use, and they are available on our portal. So we have tools, assessments, as I said, and other assets to support your cloud adoption journey. Through the tools, template and assessment enables you to manage your own journey. Not everyone wants to do this alone, so that's why we actually sit with you, or you can sit with your partner and then go through the alignment process. And as I said, there are lots of them. So I've put the links here for the assessment. The assessment is a very good tool. It will ask you a bunch of questions and will take you through the scenarios as well, what you want to deploy, your reason to go to the cloud, and it takes you through readiness, basically, and it will gauge you and will give you scoring, and will show how ready you are to start adopting the cloud. And that's it's a critical tool, and we use it thoroughly with sitting down with customers. The other one is there is a whole CAF course on our learning website. So please go to Microsoft Learn, and it's available for you there, basically for free. Or you can read our documentation, CAF documentation. It will take you through the scenarios and all the use cases, and then we'll point you directly to the assessment tools. So that's CAF in kind of a nutshell. Sorry, I'm just looking at the question. Can you provide the link to your pool? Yeah, what I'll do is I'll provide the links to you guys after this. So I'll put all the links that I have into the chat window so you guys can use it. Any questions about CAF before I move on? Just to say that CAF is a dry subject. It's a strategy and it's a process. We normally, as architects, we don't like to go through things like that, but we've seen lots of customers fail for that reason. So that's why I want to make sure that you're aware, your business is aware, your leadership is aware that we're not the only provider that provide CAF. AWS, they have their own CAF framework as well. So, and we all, go by it when we approach any engagement, if it's brownfield or or greenfield, it doesn't matter. What matters is basically how far you are within the adoption journey, how mature is your business, what you want to get out of it. That's a very important piece. So, if no questions, I can move on to the next topic. Okay, right. So that takes me to the next topic, which is the well-architected framework. The well-architected framework came into play about a year ago. What we started seeing, sorry, I'm just looking at there's a question. So I'm just going to read this question to everybody in the chat window. So how much pre-planning needs to be done and what levels before we decide cloud adoption paths? So planning, it really depends. Planning is vital. And how much planning? I would say is the main pillar before you start doing anything. But that is the planning comes from your strategy. So first, you need to have a strategy from the business to say, right, what's the reason going to the cloud? What's your ambition? What are you trying to get out of it? Is it cost saving? If it's cost saving, then definitely, I would say 95% of the migrations, it's basically there are cost saving behind it. So because a lot of, as I said, lots of businesses looking at old hardware, refreshing new hardware or new operating systems and stuff like that. So by moving to the cloud, pay as you go, and it's a pay as you go model, and that's how they start saving. And reverse, reserved instances. That's another way of saying. But as you were saying, the planning, it's a vital process here before you start, your cloud adoption path. And what I would recommend is talk to a partner. You can start having a look through the assessment tool. So go through the questions, answer those questions as you see fit to the business and how you see your current state, and that will tell you how far you are and how can you approach your your adoption journey. A lot of partners, for example, we ask a lot of partners to speak to customers, because partners, they've gone through a lot of these with other customers. They've seen the problems. They were able to fix these issues, and that's how we fed into our that came back into our CAF basically. And so any feedback, all the feedback came into CAF, and we put that as part of our enterprise landing zone. So and that's what everybody's using as well. So my answer to you is use your partner for that. Any other questions? Right. What I'm going to do, I'll move on, and if there are any questions, I'll answer them as I go along. So, as I said, the cloud, as part of the cloud adoption journey, one of the questions that we had from a lot of customers is, what is my landing zone like? How can I start building that infrastructure? And that's how we came up with our own enterprise scale landing zone, and that's available to you guys to deploy. Just be careful where you deploy it to, because it basically it ties into your tenant. It looks at your identity, so it uses your own Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, that is. If you have your own tenant to play with, then please do, but be sure that it's an expensive way of deploying, especially on an MSDN tenant. But you need to understand what you're deploying first. You need to know what kind of landing zone can best fit. And I'll show you the after going through the well-architected, I'll show you where you can find these landing zones, so you have a better view of it. So it takes me back to the well-architected. So the well-architected is a problem. It's an answer to a problem. So basically, our customers, when they started looking into the cloud, they started using the lift and shift methodology, which is an easy way of moving to the cloud. So that basically dictates how your architecture is. You're not going to re-architect. You're just going to lift and shift or rehost, but it doesn't look at all the fundamentals. So that's why we talk about why is it important in this case. And this is why. So the well-architected solution enabled customer to succeed. So let's look at what the cost optimization can do for you, as an example. here. So you are building a cost-conscious organization that is visible, accountable, and optimized. So where do I begin? You might ask. You can start to forecast and optimize cost across your organization, review data, points on left, stressing current cloud spending bar on chart and amount over budget on chart at right. Add points about projected 47% increase in cloud spend over next year. So basically, what can a well-architected solution do for you in this case? So let's have a look at that. So we're still building a cost-conscious organization, visible, accountable, and optimized. Continue to optimize security spend across your org, which means mitigating cost. Review data points about 2019 cost mitigation factors. Stress that encryption, DevSecOps, etc. work together to mitigate cost across the organization. Review data point about use of encryption, saves, of course, IT budgets. And add a second data point about business continuity management, reducing data breaches. So at this pace, basically, we're still talking about cost saving with the resiliency, HA, and security automation strategies. So we keep the cost conscious organization in mind. It's visible, accountable, and optimized. We continue to optimize and focus on cost savings, building resiliency in HA, high availability, baking security automation into your secure architecture design. Companies with IR teams, testing saves IT budget a lot of dollars, basically. Organization without security automation have the highest risk. And so that's why it's important to think on how to optimize for resiliency, HA, and security. So the well-architected means achieving your business objective with an ecosystem of best practices, assessments, and technical guidance, which includes Azure Architecture Framework, enables you to achieve your business objectives. You have to look at how to design, build, and optimize cloud solutions, and then you review the architecture. So you provide like evaluation of the workloads with gaps analysis, and you identify areas where to focus on your optimization efforts. Based on proven practices, we use the design principles. So this is an important piece here, that we share our own design principles in our architecture centers on how you best implement a service, and working with Microsoft partners and service offers, so they can support you and help you build an effective cloud solution. So let's have a look at the well-architected framework in more depth. Well-architected at Microsoft enables you to achieve these three things.
Sam, so before we continue, we do have some questions.
Yeah, sure.
In the chat. So
okay. Okay, so what level of familiarity is required of Azure for architect to design using CAF? Maybe Azure fundamental levels. The answer to that, to be able to use CAF, as I said, is just a methodology. It just shows you the way and how to adopt the cloud, and it's a process as part of it. But as part of that process, it tells you what kind of skilling you will need. If you are partnering with a Microsoft partner, then understanding, foundation understanding of Azure is definitely required. If you are architecting it yourself, then definitely you need to have deep knowledge in the technology. And I'm talking about an architecture, an architect level certifications and that kind of knowledge. But it depends, as I said, how far you are in the adoption journey. But yeah, as I said, definitely the Azure fundamentals is required. If you are adopting the cloud in any way, you are going to be operating the environment, so you need to have awareness. The next question is, does Azure have a well-architected framework incentive similar to AWS 5000 towards remediating a workload? We have lots of programs. I don't know off the top of my head. We can get you in touch with our accounting team, definitely. We've got lots of programs around the adoption journey. It could be credits towards your first workload. It could be that we give you credits, or we give money to partner to help you, to come and help you with your first workload. It really depends on what your commitment is for Microsoft Azure. It depends what your strategy is as well. Because if we see that you're going to be moving, for example, an SAP workloads in the next year, and that's something that you're looking into, then definitely our field will, our team will be, will be able to enroll you in good programs. You'll be able to get some more from Microsoft. So that's why I don't want to say what they are, but your accounting team will be able to give you that. But definitely there are a few. Can we interchange CAF and WAF with best practices and other way around? How do we draw the line between best practices and CAF goals? Right. Okay. That's a very good question, actually, Doud. So you can, well, CAF is a process, is not a technology, as we said. It's a process that will take you through the adoption journey, taking you through your strategies, your planning, your readiness. They're not interchangeable. WAF is part of your implementation and planning, so that it will fall within your planning stages. So CAF is the bigger kind of, it has WAF in there as one of the pillars, basically, within planning. And how we draw a line between best practices and CAF goals. CAF will show how far you are in the adoption, how mature you are in the adoption. Best practices, this is more like how you can deploy an application on the cloud, how you should be, for example, deploying a DC in the cloud. Best practices tells you more about the technology itself, but CAF talk more about the process, if that makes sense. I can see more people typing questions. Marty, do you want me to continue? Or okay, there's another one that I just landed. Can you please provide a quick overview of what industry standards compliance standards Azure platform meets, especially when it comes to themes such as data security, cybersecurity, etc.? Very good question, actually. We've got our trust center. So if I give me a second, I don't have the link here. Bear with me on this. I'll drop you a note when I finish my presentation. There is one of our portals is the Trust Center, Microsoft Trust Center, which basically shows you what certificates and compliance certificates that we go through for all our data centers in terms of the cybersecurity, data security, and all that stuff. I'll drop that as soon as I finish the well architected, because I can't get to my web browser at the moment. So I've just made a note about this, so I'll get that for you. Right. Any other questions? Okay. I'll start going through, just conscious of the time. Okay, so Microsoft well architected, basically that's what the name states. It enables you to enables you to succeed. It ensures, how you architect your solutions around the 5 principles. So the cost optimization, operational excellence, performance efficiency, and reliability. Design, build, optimize cloud solution using, like architectural guidance, assessment, and industry best practices. The cost optimization piece is very important when it comes to it, because when we design a pay-as-you-go cost-effective workload aligned with business objective ROI while maintaining a budget, sometimes approaching it that way, it might not be the correct way of pricing up an application or pricing up an infrastructure. That's why we rather you talk to a partner, such as to actually get a view on what the CSP program can do for you, because the cloud service providers, like for example New Signature, they can give you much better pricing when it comes to it. They can talk to you about things like reserved instances as well, and other ways they can cut costs. And the other pillars is operational excellence. So design reliable and predictable automated deployments with monitoring, performance management, and extensive automated and manual testing from an infrastructure and application perspective. The other important piece, which is the performance efficiency. So we want to make sure that we lower maintenance cost, improve user experience, and increase agility by architecting solutions with scalability baked in. Move to PaaS by default. We keep emphasizing on that, especially if you are in the kind of the innovation phase of CAF, where basically you're looking at innovating rather than actually just maintaining infrastructure. And then resiliency. And this is one of the things that I keep seeing in the news as like, okay, right, we've had, as all the cloud providers, we have like outages, and that happens for any one of the reasons. It could be a hardware fault, it could be an issue with a component within the service. But if you don't design your service based on resiliency, so 2 of each, for example, like having like a load balancer, or something to really fell over to, using the paired regions as well, and having that in mind. And we get lots of questions coming from like customers saying, right, okay, I've built my infrastructure in the cloud, but my servers stopped. What happened, basically? And as we start going through the root case analysis, then it becomes evident that the customer has in factored in resiliency and high availability. The next thing is security. So we build with security by design, and that is an important piece here, because we spend $1 billion a year on security, implementing security on our platform. And that's from Azure Security Center, using or Azure Threat Protection, Azure Firewall, our Azure SIEM solution, the Azure Sentinel, and all others that these native solutions, that they can look at your platform from high up and give you that single pane of glass to look at your infrastructure, to be able to see what happens from one point to the other. And this is not just across Azure, and I just need to emphasize this. This is not just across Azure. This is across your on-premise and other cloud providers. So, and it works seamlessly. And that's why we need to really think about these as part of the well-architected framework when you start implementing your first workload. So one of the questions that we had is best practices to drive workload quality. And yeah, using, like, for example, Azure cost optimization. A lot of people, they don't know about, for example, Azure Advisor. That sits in the background when you move your workload, and it kicks in and it looks at your workload and assesses if your workload needs to scale up or scale down. Especially if you, when you created your workload, you haven't given it time to assess what the workload actually needs from the resources perspective. Sometimes we build large machines and scale sets and stuff like that. We think, okay, the more the better, but that doesn't work like that in the cloud. We look at how you utilize those resources, because you're getting billed on a permanent basis here. If you create a resource with like 3 virtual cores, and you're only using a single core, your application only a single thread, what's the point? So you need to think about how you best utilize your resources, and that's how you start cutting costs. And we've seen a lot of that basically with customers, especially who accelerated their journey to the cloud in the last 6 months because of the pandemic. The operational, go back to the cost optimization. There are things, as I said, the Azure hybrid benefits that you can utilize. Azure, the reserved instances. You can use shutdown procedures as well. So if you like, you've got dev test labs that you can, or instances that you can shut down when you're not using them. Resizing machines down. Especially if you don't, they're not highly utilized, and you can size them up when you need them, or moving to PaaS. Always moving to PaaS seems like is a much better way of cutting cost. For operation excellence, DevOps is a way to make sure that you streamline your deployment, to make sure that your deployment, it can be repetitive. I hate to go through the portal myself. To be honest, I haven't been on the portal for quite a long time. So last week I was coaching at an event which is migrating workloads into Azure, and that was my first time in 4 months. Because I use code. I use DevOps to deploy. I use code to deploy. Portals do change very quickly, and people can make mistakes. So that's why, to make it more repetitive and error-prone, error-free, go with DevOps. Monitoring processes and cadence. Design for performance efficiency, design for scaling. Make sure that you can scale up as well as scaling down. And monitoring for performance. You can use things like Azure Monitor to alert you if you require to scale up, or it can do that on your behalf. It can automatically. And then reliability. So you need to understand what's your requirement for this app. Do you require highly available nodes? Do you require? You have to test. You need to make sure that your application can support it as well, and that will help you to build such consistency in your workloads and in your deployment as well. And with thorough monitoring of health, and to make it easier to respond to failures and disaster, because all of metrics, we get lots of metrics into our platform. Using Azure Monitor, you can feed in lots of metrics, and you can base triggers to alert you, to log an incident into your ITSM, for example, to make sure that the right people know about a problem within your infrastructure. And the last piece, which is the security, it's how you manage your identity. This is a question that we get from a lot of our customers is do we need to use Azure AD? And the answer is yes, because that's how you access your operational, how your operational teams can access the platform, and how you can assign permissions into the platform and security around the platform. and how do you integrate it with your on-premise? That's a very important piece. So I've got a question here. Is WAF more geared for application teams instead of landing zone level? Landing zone may be well architected according to CAF, but what if application failed to adhere to those 5 pillars of WAF? So the CAF and WAF, as I said, there are 2 different things. WAF, we used WAF in our enterprise scale. When we built our enterprise scale landing zone, we used WAF, the well-architected framework, to build that, to make sure that there is resiliency, there is redundancy. When we talk about CAF, again, CAF is more like geared towards the business, how you're going to adopt, and as you go into the planning stages, that's when the well-architected and the an enterprise landing zone fall into play. So they all link together in a way, but CAF, kind of the umbrella on top, that puts them all together. If you start with just enterprise landing zone, it is CAF aligned, but it doesn't tell you how far you are within your journey, what you need to do next, because it tells your business there are gaps. It will flag the gaps within your processes and procedures and tells you how to plug them in. Do you need to skill your people? Do you need to align with a partner, for example? Especially if you are breaking, if you are new to the cloud, if you haven't used the cloud before, or if you are already innovating, what are you missing? What are the gaps in your implementations? And all this, CAF will be able to align that and will be able to flag it to you to be able to plug them in. But enterprise landing zone and well architected, this is more, as you said, it's more geared towards the implementation, the planning for the application teams, but there are 2 different things, even though they all sit within CAF. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so let me know if, sorry, there's another question that at technical architecture and solutioning, ops management level, especially of cloud native application, how can CAF help multi-cloud hybrid environment? We have a mix of OpenShift, AWS, Kubernetes, and Azure Kubernetes. Okay, CAF, it will help you. Yes, CAF will. Okay, right. If you start approaching CAF as in a tool to help you to migrate or to help you to plug in those gaps, it's not the right thing to do. What we need to get out of CAF is your strategy. If you are a multi-cloud you have a multi-cloud strategy, which we see a lot with a lot of our customers as well, is CAF can help you to understand those strategies, can help you understand what you're missing within your strategy, and it will flag this out to you. And I do encourage you to go and try the assessment for yourself. It will take you through a set of questions, and I'm going to share a couple of slides which takes you through all of these anyway. You need to go through these assessments. It doesn't matter if you are just a private cloud, you're sitting in private cloud or another cloud provider or with Microsoft Azure. The CAF adoption framework, it will align your processes, it will align your people to your strategy to make sure that when you start moving, or when you move to the cloud, or if you migrate from one provider to the other, you have the right procedures, the right metrics, and the right business case to move. Because, as I said, especially during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of customers say, right, I want to move to the cloud because I want to make sure that all my staff they can work from home, they can scale, all my customers as well, because I'm not completely satisfied of the way that my on-premises is actually being managed. So what they go through is kind of a lift and shift, and they move as it is. When we've seen lots of these, and they start, screaming to us like, "Come and help me, please," because I've made a mess out of it. And because the cloud doesn't work like that, and you need to really have a clear thought, a clear vision of what your business strategy is before doing anything, because especially with brownfield, and I know you're saying it's a mess, but if you start moving things in between without having a clear strategy of what you want to achieve, then it will become even messier, and it becomes even more complex to fix. So I would say you really need to take that up through to your leadership, understand what they're trying to achieve at this point in time, and then approach the CAF, do the assessment, and understand where you are. And I would say engage a partner. You don't want to do this on your own, especially if you are in multi-cloud. I mean, you're talking about things like OpenShift. Now we can, we've seen this with a lot of customers which have OpenShift running in their own data centers, and now we have that kind of service. But as I said, it's a complex solution. It's not just a matter of technology. It's a process. You need to have your business aligned to it as well. But yeah, it's a great it's a great question. Thank you for that. Please, by the way, reach out to me if you need to discuss anything after that, and I can point you to the right direction, or we can have a more thorough discussion about this. So this is, as I said, I'm only touching the surface here, and I'm struggling to put all that content in one place, and it's quite hard, especially that I know there's a lot of architects probably on the call, and they want to understand how that landing zone and how the technology fits in within all that framework. So please reach out if you need any clarification afterwards. Okay, so let's move on. So doing business means making trade-offs. So what are the trade-offs in this? So when deploying, like for example, workloads, you optimize cost and dev workloads, as you're saying here. Or if you, for mission critical, for example, the first thing you do is you up the performance, but by for mission critical workloads, by building bigger VMs, for example, and the cost will increase straight away, and the security on top of this. And that's why when you start thinking about what the well architected, it puts a perspective for each of these when you come to designing them for the long run, and to make sure you are designing to succeed. It's not just to move something to the cloud and you see that it's going to cost you a lot more, and then you fell back into to on-premise, which is not what we want in this stage. So I talked about some resources. So the first one is basically our Microsoft Docs. So I thoroughly encourage you to read our Azure Docs, because we do have a lot of our designs recommendations all stated in our docs. So please read our docs. The other one is the Architecture Center. So for those architects, people among you, if you want to look at things like guidance for architecting solutions on Azure using established patterns and best practices to design and build more scalable, resilient, and manageable applications on Azure. So that's the link. And for the well-architected framework, so that takes you into more in depth what the well-architected is, and the assessment as well. So the framework consists of 5 pillars of architecture excellence, cost optimization, operational excellence and performance, efficiency, reliability, security. So and you can dive into each of those pillars. And then we'll talk about the inhibitors to overall workloads. And that's this is just a sample list, really. So I'm not going to read all of them. So what I'll do is, if for those who want a link to that to this deck, I'll post a link to it so you can guys have a look through it. But there is a lot of detail in our docs through each of the pillars, and the framework, the well-architected framework, will help you derive the best practices and the architecture, the best architectures for your applications. So for the review, so if you want to examine your workload through lens of reliability, cost optimization, this is what I said earlier, is you can assess where you are within the well-architected framework, and you can use this at aka ms architecture /review, and what that will give you is this report. So basically, it will show you it will take you through a series of questions across 5 pillars of the well-architected framework, and from your response, the results of the assessment provides actionable steps to consider implementing to improve the quality of the workload, and this will help you overcome your hurdles effectively and build your workload with confidence. It also will allow you to choose only one pillar or more depending on where you want to focus. So you don't have to do the whole lot. You can just focus on a single pillar if that's your focus area, or you think there is a gap in that area. So the assessment will take about, it depends, 20-25 minutes to complete between if you choose all the 5 pillars. But yeah, you can go through. I mean, normally the partners sit with the customer, and we do it with, they do it with them directly, so they can understand the environment, understand what they want to do, and how to get there. Let's see what we've got next. So there are a few resources. This is from our docs website, from Azure Docs, which basically is the framework itself, and it's the set, all the guidelines and links to the forms, the assessments that I talked about, and it takes you through each of the pillars in more detail. And I'll paste all these links, by the way, so you guys don't need to make any notes of them. Yeah, and this is it. So from that point of view, so what I would say is, take the assessment for both CAF and WAF. Read our documentation. There are training specifically for CAF. There is training which has been done for enterprise scale. There is actually the enterprise scale training has landed already in our learning website, which I'll post the link to as well. Please go and see it as well. It's done by our engineering team, and they put a lot of effort to showcase what you can do with enterprise scale deployment. Then review your design using our principles and patterns, browse our reference architectures, and engage with partners. This is very important, that you need to engage with partners, or if you're engaging directly with Microsoft. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you. Sorry, I mean, that was very quick kind of overview. These 2 topics are huge, as I said initially, but yeah, thank you for listening. So, and any questions, please just fire away.
So yeah, let's wait for a few more minutes for questions.
Sure.
Sam, thank you very much for sharing all this information with us. From the questions, I see that it was very, very interesting, and people around working different projects, different companies, they do have those kind of issues, and then the questions raised globally. So I shared that the recording will be shared on uploaded to our YouTube channel. Once again, that feel free to buy coffee for Sam if you enjoyed it. So this is like we are running a small initiative for our presenters. Yes, please do that one. And if you don't have any other questions, I see Ingen and Vinod is typing, so probably we'll have a few more. So let's wait for those. And yeah, it was really interesting to hear and to understand, and to look forward. And guys, if you do have any other questions, so you can share it and you can ask on our meetup channel on this event, and I will able to ping and to address this questions to Sam, and hopefully we'll get an answer to those. On the same note, I would like to encourage everyone or anyone who is interested to present as well. From the type of questions, I see that lots of our community members have interesting ways or interesting questions or interesting solutions along the way. So it would be interesting, to hear as well. How did you manage to overcome some kind of issues, or how you adopted the framework or solutions in one way or another? So feel free to approach myself, Daniel, or just ping it on a meetup chat, and we can organize it. All right, so it seems that no more questions. It's just lots of coffee is coming on the way. That's awesome.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, so guys, thank you very much for joining and participating. We'll meet in 2 weeks' time. Sam, thank you very much for being with us today, and enjoy the rest of the Tuesday. Thank you all.
Thank you everybody. Thank you. Have a great day.